Hi everyone, this is Don Smith and I'd like to welcome you to this month's video blog on vignetting. On these blogs, I thank a lot of you out there for writing in and telling me you've enjoyed two of them that we've done in the past, and you said to continue with them, so we will be doing a lot more of these going forward for the remainder of this year. Let's turn to the topic of vignetting now. And there are just so many different ways we can vignette a photo. And I tell my workshop groups that I follow a simple little saying that Ansel Adams used to say about vignetting. Number one, he said, I vignette every photo I work on. But number two, if you can tell where my vignette is, or if you can see my vignette, I've failed. And the whole goal of his vignetting was to work the eye into the center of the frame where all the action was and away from the edges. Obviously, we don't want our viewer's eye leaking out of the frame at anywhere along the frame. But you know, a standard vignette, which I consider a four-corner vignette, doesn't work for all images. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways. We're starting out here in Lightroom, and we're going to talk about that standard four-corner vignette. And the way I do it is after I pretty much balance my image up, I come down here to the effects panel, second one from the bottom, and as I open it, you're going to see highlight priority, post-crop vignette. Now I do get some different options in here, color priority, paint overlay. I just like leaving it in the default setting of highlight priority. And then it's just simply tweaking the amount. Here, if I go to the left, and I'm going to really pull onto the left, you see that the edges darken in all four corners. Let's leave it about there. There is a midpoint, so I can expand or contract the vignette depending on how I want to do it. Let's reset that. I can change the roundness of the vignette. There's a lot of ways to control it. Perhaps the one I pay attention most is with the feathering. Okay, but really it's a one-touch tug for me here. And I want to highlight something here also, that every once in a while when shooting at really small apertures and or if we're using a filter holder, etc., we could get a vignette happening with the lens itself and or with the holder. So this also goes the other way. We can lighten up an effect that we don't want, or in the case of some old style portraits, I guess, you can really go crazy with this. But for us landscape photographers, usually this is used to just kind of hold the eye, work it to the center, and I think if we all kind of just think about what Ansel said about if I'm showing the vignette, then I'm not successful. If you can spot the vignette, I'm not successful. And a lot of times I'll just get up and walk away from the computer, and then I'll come back and just kind of give my eye a break. I'll even ask my wife to come in, and don't hesitate to ask for help. But again, the goal is to work the eye into the center of the frame. So that's the simple way that I do it in Lightroom. Now, let's take a look at a couple of different ways to do it with third-party filters in Photoshop. Most third-party filters nowadays offer some form of vignetting. I'm going to just pick one out by random here. You can see I use Luminar, I use On1 Effects, and I'm going to go into the one on On1 Effects because they really have a nice one here in their filters. And let's just scroll to the left here. And it's this guy right here called the Big Softy. And when I apply this, there's going to be a default setting. Now come over to the right side. Every filter that is applied, we can turn that effect off. And we can adjust the amount of opacity we want. So that's another way of doing it. As I said, Luminar offers them. Most third-party filters, somewhere, if you dig into it, will offer a vignetting filter for you. So that's another way of doing it, but that's a really good one here. And let's back out of on one, and I'm going to come into one more image here. This is an image I captured just last week in my Spring Big Sur workshop of a moonset at Garrapatta Park. And this time, let's go ahead. I'm in Photoshop now, and let's go ahead and, well, I'm going to open this first of all into Adobe Camera Raw, okay? And as you can see, we have the same set of commands as we do, or modules, excuse me, as we do in Lightroom. So I'm going to come over here to the FX, that's the effects, and you can see the post-crop vignetting has been moved to the bottom. They just switched the positioning of the dehaze filter and the post-crop vignetting in Adobe Camera Raw. So same thing. If I was to vignette this picture, I like what it's doing kind of towards the bottom here, but I dislike what it's doing up here on top. So a couple ways we can deal with that. We can take an adjustment brush and we can erase that out. That's one way of doing it. But I'm going to show you a little bit more effective way, let's say, of doing kind of odd types of vignette. I would like to tone down just this bottom lighter green section, as you can see here. And I think I just accidentally put the content aware brush on there, so I'm going to back out of there, Command or Control Z. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my lasso tool, L for lasso. And what I'd like to do is I'm just going to start about in here, but I'm going to keep my eye kind of on this greener section, brighter greener section down here. And I'm just going to do a rough outline of it. Now, I'm going to place the pointer inside the selection, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click feather. And I teach that normally I feather at radiuses in increments of 100 points. This one, I kind of want to make it semi-big, but not spread it out too far onto that dark area of the ice plant. So I'm going to kind of split the middle and go about 300 pixels here. And then I'm going to come over on my layers palette and I'm going to grab a curves box. Now, you probably have noticed that I do have the Tony Kuiper system opened up in the back, version 5. And I'm going to trash this layer here for a moment. We're going to redraw this. Just for those of you who have the Tony Kuiper, this is actually the new one, version 5. I'm still learning it. And I'm going to go 300 again, and we'll close the properties box. Right there is the curve box. So either way, I can come to the bottom of layers, or I can click and Tony will actually provide a layer in the curves. I like doing it with the curves dialog box. It's really easy. I double click on the curves dialog icon right there, and my curve box opens. And typically there's two ways I can deal with this. I can take the targeted adjustment tool right here under the word preset, and I can put it anywhere I want into that picture. And take a look back up at the curves box. You'll see a little bouncing line as I move this around, a little bouncing ball rather. And I usually try to get it right about the far right edge of the data mask. I click and I start to pull down. Very simple. And I'll usually go a little bit past where I think it might look right. Somewhere in there. Now it's put a second point on there, which I really didn't want, so we'll just pull that one off. Let's come back up to the layers palette here. I do have an opacity, so let's turn the effect off and then turn it on, or you can change the opacity however you would like. And now you see I've just changed the bottom part of the image to allow the eye to work back up into the photo, but I didn't mess with the top part. So oftentimes the point I'm trying to make is a four-corner vignette is good for certain pictures that have darker tones around all four corners. But when you have an area that's lighter, such as this beautiful twilight wedge we got here, it doesn't always work. So those are the tips for today on how I think about going about silhouetting an image. If you have any topics you'd like me to cover in any of these monthly video blogs that I'll be doing, just send me an email, don@donsmithphotography.com, And if I see one that I think is going to work for the majority of the people, you will get an opportunity that I'll teach a lesson on it. So until next month, we will talk to you later.